on, turning the page.
The iPad Pro has been my favorite Apple device since 2018. I made the switch from a traditional laptop to the iPad as my primary laptop replacement, and ever since then, I've been an iPad guy, using and loving the device every single day. It handles all the work I need to do, or I should say all the work I need my laptop to do, and the M4 iPad Pro is no different. It's such a complete package, from the new design and the OLED display to the updated Magic Keyboard, the Apple Pencil Pro, and of course the new M4 chip, which is arguably the biggest update since the M1. But even though I love it so much, I decided to tuck it away for the last few weeks in favor of this guy, the iPad Air. This is the new M3 iPad Air, and it's kind of like the MacBook Air of iPads, and just like the new M4 MacBook Air, it gets dangerously close to being a pro level device. But the question is it a pro level device, and is it worth saving your money versus going with an iPad Pro? When it comes to the design, well, it's an iPad. It's got the same squared off sides, volume rocker, USB-C port, and power button, which also doubles as a Touch ID sensor. It's quick and reliable, but it's not Face ID, and this is actually the one thing that's tripped me up the most when moving away from the Pro. It's also got an almost edge-to-edge display like the rest of the lineup. The reason why I say almost is because the bezel on here is actually pretty big and almost kind of feels intrusive. On the back, it's just aluminum with a 12 megapixel single camera, which is perfect for an iPad because you're most likely using this to scan documents or textbooks or take a quick photo of like a whiteboard or something. Well, at least I hope so. I mean, if you take photos on the iPad, it's okay. There's no judgment here. Making our way to the front of the device, we have the display. Now, this is arguably the most important part of the iPad, since it's not only what you're viewing, but also what you're actually interacting with, since this is, of course, a touchscreen device. I went with the 11-inch model, which does feel small at first, but once you kind of get into that like flow state, whether you're working or watching content or playing a game or whatever it is you're doing, the 11-inch screen size is surprisingly good, especially if you're using this more as an iPad rather than a laptop. My first iPad Pro was actually the 11-inch variant, so this kind of gives me like this weird like nostalgic feeling in a way, but there have been a few moments where I do wish I had a little bit more screen real estate. So if you do plan on using this as like a laptop focused device, it might be a better option to go with the 13-inch. The panel itself is a liquid retina LCD with 500 nits of brightness. It supports True Tone, which I always turn off, and it also covers the P3 wide color gamut, which is really nice. It's also a laminated display, which means just like the iPad Pro, the front glass and the screen are kind of like fused together in a way, so it feels like the screen and the display are like right in front of you, opposed to being behind a sheet of glass. Regardless, this is a really good looking screen. It's not flagship level like the iPad Pros, but it is good enough, there's no doubt about it. And the main difference that most people are going to notice is just the refresh rate. Yes, it's 60 Hz, whereas the Pro is 120 Hz. Now, I can go on and on about the difference and why the Pro is better, but all I can really say is you gotta see this in person. The Pro has a way better screen in every single way, shape, and form. There's no doubt about it, but you really need to experience it with your own eyes to judge for yourself. For me personally, it's kind of like the screen size, where once I get into my flow state, that workflow, the LCD 60 Hz matters less and less. But that said, at the same time, I do notice it every single time. I can't lie. Like once I pick up the iPad Air, I notice that 60 Hz LCD, but to be fair, I have been an iPad Pro user for like 4 or 5 years now. On the front, we have a pretty solid front-facing camera. It's a 12 megapixel center stage camera, which keeps you in frame as you move around during FaceTime or video calls. And I use the iPad a lot for video calls, and it's just been solid. I feel like it'd be pretty cool if one day Apple put 2 cameras on the iPad, so one in the landscape mode and then one also in portrait, so that whichever way you're holding the iPad, the camera will just kind of flip to it automatically. I feel like that'd be pretty cool. All right, before we get into the iPad itself, we got to talk about the accessories. And the first 2 accessories I want to share with you guys are from the sponsor of this video, ESR. The ESR flip magnetic case with pencil holder has quickly become one of my go-to accessories, and a big reason why is its clever portrait mode. Whether you're scrolling through social media, watching short videos, or reading, the fold-out flap and smart triangular design make vertical browsing easy. If you need to switch to landscape mode, the multi-angle design comes in handy, as you can tilt the iPad down from 45 to 60 degrees for watching videos, FaceTiming, or just getting work done. Or if you're more of a writer or a sketcher, you can set it to the 25-degree angle, which is perfect for creative tasks. I've set it up right under my monitor on my desk, and it's been great as I'm able to just tilt the iPad just enough so it doesn't block anything on my screen, and this sort of flexibility makes a big difference, and it now gives the iPad Air a new home at my desk setup. The best part is these strong magnets keep the case firmly in place, so whether it's on your lap, on the couch, or just holding it in your hands, there's no slipping or wobbling. And if you don't want to carry your iPad around without a screen protector, ESR also offers the Ultra Fit Classic Screen Protector. This protector helps you apply it perfectly every single time, and it includes a dust removal strip to ensure a bubble-free and dust-free application. It's even 2 times stronger than standard protectors, and if you're looking for something super simple to install, it really doesn't get any easier than this. If you're interested in boosting your iPad experience, then you've got to check out these ESR accessories. They will be the first 2 links in the description, and huge thanks to ESR for sponsoring this video. The Magic Keyboard is easily the most important accessory for unlocking the full potential of your iPad, and with the launch of the new M3 iPad Air, Apple has also introduced a new version designed specifically for it. Right away, it brings some welcome upgrades, a larger trackpad, a full function row with media controls, do not disturb, dictation, spotlight, multitasking, and brightness adjustments, and it also offers more viewing angles than the original Magic Keyboard. However, it's not all improvements. The keyboard deck is still made out of the same rubbery plastic material as the original, which isn't as durable over time. Another drawback is the trackpad, as it's a physical click mechanism rather than Apple's Force Touch, which means it's louder and doesn't provide the same smooth haptic feel. Another very noticeable drawback, and the one that I personally hate the most, I really hate this, is that there's no backlighting. I don't know why they didn't add backlighting to this keyboard, but they didn't, and it's very frustrating. That said, the typing experience remains fantastic. Apple's iPad keyboards have always felt great to type on, arguably even better than the MacBook keyboards. I can't quite put my finger on what makes them so satisfying, but this remains the best typing experience Apple offers, and the floating design also sticks around, which looks pretty clean and sleek. The trackpad, despite lacking the Force Touch, is still a great trackpad. It's probably better than most Windows laptops out there still, and all the gestures work as expected, which is essential since the trackpad essentially acts as an extension of the iPad's touchscreen. One of the best and most practical things about the Magic Keyboard is the USB-C port on the side, which is just dedicated for charging, but this just allows you to free up your iPad's single USB-C port for accessories or external drives or whatever you want to plug into it, and this also allows you to charge the iPad from either side, which is something that the MacBook Air doesn't even offer. Now, personally, I'm not someone who uses the Apple Pencil really at all, but I always keep it with me just in case. And what's really nice about the iPad Air is that it supports both Apple Pencils that are currently available. With the Apple Pencil Pro, you get all the bells and the whistles, so like barrel roll, the new squeeze gesture, which brings up a new menu when you squeeze it. There's still double tap, there's hover functionality, and actually that squeeze gesture can be mapped to a Siri shortcut, which is what I personally use it for, which is actually pretty cool. One thing to keep in mind though is that the iPad Air is capped at 60 Hz, so technically speaking, you're getting a slightly slower or laggier experience in comparison to the iPad Pro, which is at 120 Hz. But, and I can tell you this confidently, you will never ever notice a difference between an iPad Air and an iPad Pro in terms of the Apple Pencil. The Apple Pencil is just so smooth, it's fluid, responsive. Apple's kind of perfected the pencil experience on all the iPads, so it's not something you should worry or care about, but it is a thing that's like technically there, so I guess it's worth mentioning. All right, let's get into what really matters, the experience and the performance. And I wouldn't say I push my iPad to the absolute extreme, but I do use it as a laptop, so I need it to perform, I need it to be reliable, and the M3 chip just delivers. And I don't think anyone was going to question that because this is a Mac chip inside an iPad, and it's just been rock solid throughout my use. For me, the iPad is like a digital brain dump, just like my all-in-one hub for staying organized. So whether I'm doing admin tasks or like creative work, this iPad has just been crushing my day-to-day workflow. Things 3 is at the center of it all. It's my go-to to-do list app, and honestly where my entire life lives. I featured it on the channel a bunch because it's just that good, and I use it to build out everything. So shot lists, brand deliverables, everything in my personal life, and even tiny little details like video timestamps. Email, of course, is another big one, and I actually recently switched to the default Apple Mail app after Spark introduced a subscription, but I've actually been really enjoying the default Apple app. It's got a pretty clean interface, and with the Apple Intelligence integrations, it's been quite nice. Like, you can summarize emails, get the key points and stuff, and I've actually even used the ChatGPT integration to actually write some of my emails. I know it kind of feels like cheating, but I mean, we're all doing it, right? For notes, I use IA Writer. It's been my go-to for so many years now, and my typical workflow is to dictate my thoughts and let that mess sort of just like flow out, and then run it through ChatGPT to clean things up before pasting it back in for a final polish. But since I love the Magic Keyboard experience so much, I just find myself typing more than ever. So whether I'm typing a video script or writing an IG caption or just brainstorming my ideas, it's always IA Writer using the iPad with the Magic Keyboard, a little bit of ChatGPT. It's just such a great workflow. And then there's Safari, probably my most used app. I just love browsing on the iPad, whether I'm using the Magic Keyboard or just holding it in my hand. I always have a ton of tabs open, like product research, Reddit threads, new apps, video ideas, and yeah, of course, some online shopping too. Being creative is a huge part of my life, and on the iPad, there are just 2 core apps that I really rely on. The first is Canva. I use it to create my thumbnails, work on my media kit, and design social stories or static posts. And I've even been using it a bit for video editing, mainly for like graphics, animations, just that kind of thing. It's not a massive or heavy creative workflow, but I am exporting a lot, moving elements around and kind of doing animation work. So yeah, the M3 is definitely being used and the experience has been super smooth, and that is what's most important. The second creative app, and the one that I definitely use most, is Photomator. It's my go-to for photo editing, and you've probably heard me talk about why I love this app, but the features are just next level and they really take advantage of Apple Silicon. The M3 handles everything from adjustments, subject selection, machine learning upscaling, denoising, the preset applications, basically just as well as the M4 Pro. I've even been color grading my videos in this app, so once I find the look that I like via the adjustments and everything, I can just export it as a LUT and then drop that into my video editing software of choice, which is Final Cut Pro. To be honest, that's pretty much it when it comes to creative work on the iPad though. While it can definitely handle more creative applications and workflows, I still find myself glued to the Mac for most of them. I do a lot of video editing, and while Final Cut is available on the iPad, and I have tried it, I just find that there's a lot more features and everything just feels a lot more natural over on the Mac. My typical iPad workflow looks something like this: Safari on the left, and then either Mail or IA Writer, whatever active app I'm working on, over on the right, and split view. When I'm editing photos or working on graphics, Photomator and Canva go full screen, while Things 3, music, and files live in slide over for quick access. This setup obviously changes and shifts depending on what I'm actually doing, so we can have like 2 Safari windows, IA Writer and Mail, Mail and Things 3, IA Writer Things 3, Safari Things 3, 2 files tabs open. The list goes on and on. The point is, I like to keep all my apps open and just swipe through them as I need them. Split view and slide over are my go-to for multitasking. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of Stage Manager. I feel like it's very cluttered. I almost feel like it's trying too hard, if that makes any sense, and I feel like split view is just way more cleaner and a lot more focused. It's also super easy to navigate with the keyboard shortcuts, which if you guys want to know those keyboard shortcuts, then head over to my IG because I got a short form video dropping soon on those. And yes, this was a little shameless plug, but go follow me over on Instagram. Now, when it comes to external monitor support, you kind of have to use Stage Manager, but honestly, I'm not really into using iPads like desktop computers, especially the Air, since it only supports USB 3 speeds. You're limited in terms of accessories and bandwidth and how many devices you can actually connect to it. If you're going for a proper desktop style experience, then go for the iPad Pro, since that does have Thunderbolt, but then again, the M4 Mac Mini exists, so just go get that. That said, I don't think iPadOS is fully there yet in terms of a desktop replacement. If I need some serious multitasking or multiple displays, I'll just use the Mac Studio over there. But one of the best parts about the iPad in terms of desktop use is actually using it with Sidecar. Sidecar is easily one of the best features in the Apple ecosystem, as it lets you use your iPad as a secondary display to your Mac, and the iPad Air has a pretty solid screen, so it is a great companion to really any Mac setup. I mean, it's not the iPad Pro with the OLED, but it's still a great option for some little extra screen real estate. Battery life has also been a strong point with the iPad Air. Most days it easily lasts me a full day of use, sometimes even more if I'm just using it casually here and there. Of course, more demanding tasks will drain battery faster, but it overall holds up really well. And just like the MacBook Air, one of my favorite things about the iPad is just how little power it needs to get going again. Like, you can just grab a 45-watt brick, plug it in, and you'll be back up and running in no time. All right, so this is just how I use my iPad on a day-to-day basis, and obviously your mileage is going to vary, but something that we all do on our iPads is watch content and also play games. Watching content is of course enjoyable on the M3 iPad Air. It's got a great screen, solid battery life for like binging seasons and stuff, and the speakers are actually pretty good too. They're not pro level speakers, but they're pretty solid if you don't have a pair of headphones with you. Now, gaming is on another level here. I genuinely believe iPads are peak gaming devices, especially within Apple's lineup. I really enjoy playing Call of Duty Mobile on here, and pairing it with my old Xbox controller, it's such a smooth experience. I maxed out all the settings and I didn't notice a single drop frame, and the iPad didn't even get warm. I also spent some time playing some of my favorite Apple Arcade games, and it was the same story here. No lag, no hiccups, a constant 60 Hz refresh rate, and depending on the game, the graphics actually looked really good too. When you pair your iPad with a gaming controller, it genuinely feels like a console level experience. The only thing is that there aren't that many AAA games available on the iPad itself. I know there are some like in the works, and there are some slowly coming out and becoming available, but I really hope to see just so many more coming in the future. Okay, but what does this all really mean? Well, the M3 iPad Air is technically the most complete version we've ever seen of the iPad Air. We have the complete iPad design, which yes, has been around for a while now, but we also have this new redesigned Magic Keyboard, which isn't that different than the older generation, but it is new enough. Like, we got the function wheel, the large trackpad, and the camera cutout. I know that's not a big deal, but I think this is the first time Apple's actually curated the camera cutout for the iPad Air. Then you also have full Apple Pencil support, whether it's the USB-C version or the Pencil Pro. It's fully supported. There's no weird like sticking it on and not charging and like all that other weird stuff that we've had before. It's just all just going to work. And of course, the performance. It's the M3 chip. It's a great piece of silicon. It's a Mac chip inside the iPad, even though technically Mac chips are just beefed up iPad chips. So this is technically still an iPad. Regardless, that's besides the the point, it's a great piece of silicon. So whether you want to do work tasks or you want to do creative tasks, you want to game, watch content, no matter what you want to do, this M3 iPad Air is going to handle it flawlessly. I feel like I could have even pushed it further with my typical workflow. I would argue it felt no different than the M4 iPad Pro. I mean, I'm sure if I got into like the nitty gritty of it, the benchmarking and all that type of test, there would be a difference. But like for normal, general day-to-day actually using the iPad, there's no difference. They're basically on par with each other. So if you were worried about performance for some reason, don't be. If you're in the market or debating this iPad Air, just go for it. And if you want to make this more of like a laptop-like device, I'd probably recommend going with the 13-inch. The only reason why I suggest the 13-inch is actually nothing to do with the screen size itself, because I've been testing the 11-inch. I've had no real issues with that, like the smaller screen size. It actually comes down to the Magic Keyboard. With the 13-inch, you get that full keyboard deck, whereas on the 11-inch, you get like a shrunk down version of it. And I noticed that I just made a lot of typing mistakes and errors with the 11-inch because I just wasn't used to that smaller keyboard deck. Obviously, your mileage is going to vary in terms of that, but yeah, if you want that full laptop-like experience, I'd probably recommend the 13-inch just because of the Magic Keyboard. Now, for me personally, I will be switching back to the M4 iPad Pro, and it has everything to do with the display. Like, once you get used to an iPad with 120 Hz ProMotion, it is so hard to go back from. And really, that just has everything to do with iPadOS. Like, it's just a more performant version of iOS, so there are tons of animations, transitions, and obviously you're interacting with the screen. So that 120 Hz really does make an overall difference to your experience on the iPad. Not to mention the M4 iPad Pro also has OLED, and I love OLED. Every screen that I use is basically OLED, I think. Like, that's OLED. I have another monitor I pair with it that's OLED. My TV's OLED. Obviously, the iPad Pro's OLED, phones are OLED. There's a lot of OLED, and just like ProMotion, once you go OLED, you don't really want to go back from it. But if you aren't a display nerd like I am, and you don't care about ProMotion, you don't care about OLED, go with the iPad Air, because in terms of performance, again, they are on par with each other, and you are going to love the iPad Air. It's just something that I personally can't get past. Which leads me into my final point, and that's actually purchasing the iPad. And one of the best and worst things about the iPad is iPadOS. Now, like I just mentioned, iPadOS is a slightly more performant version of iOS. And because we have Mac chips inside these iPads, you can get an iPad that's 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 years old at this point, and it's still going to be able to do 90% of what these current generation iPad Pros are doing. Really, the best thing that I can recommend to you is get an iPad, whether it's an Air or Pro, with a Mac chip on the inside. So get an M1, M2, M3, M4 if you can find a good deal on the M4 iPad Pro, but get a Mac chip inside your iPad and you will have basically the full iPadOS experience, and you're going to be saving quite a bit of cash while you're at it. Anyways, that's it for me. I had a lot of fun making this video. I was excited to test out the iPad Air. Like, I knew it wouldn't be that different from the iPad Pro, but I really didn't think they'd be this similar. Let me know what you think of the M3 iPad Air. What iPad Air are you rocking? What do you use your iPad for? I want to know in the comments section down below. I just love the iPad. I love talking about the iPad. And if you guys like this video, make sure to give it a like and share it to a friend. And if you like Apple tech or desk setup related content, make sure to subscribe. That thing is about to get completely redesigned soon, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. And I will catch you guys in that video. Peace.